So for these fill in the blanks, okay, fill in the blanks of reading, the first thing I would suggest is you should go through when you get the, when you move to this question, go through these words and visualize their meaning in your head. If you know their meaning, get some idea, the visualizing their meaning, because that can help you. You can find, because there are 3 or 4 blanks, maybe 1 or 2, even when you're cursory, you have a cursive reading, you may get them right. So first thing is visualizing, that can help. The other thing is, before we move forward, I'll tell you, there are a few things very important for these questions. I'll say it depends on grammar. Depends on collocation, vocabulary, and context. So there are 4 things that determine these questions: grammar, collocation. The third thing is vocabulary. And the fourth thing I'll say, the context. We'll talk about each of these 4 one by one. Okay, we'll talk about each of these 4 one by one. So these fill in the blanks depend on the 4 of these things. So first I'll be talking about grammar. Okay, so what part of grammar? Grammar is quite broad, I'll say, in English. Can you mute your microphone, please, everyone? If you have any questions, do unmute and let me know. Otherwise, please do mute so it doesn't distract the voice or others. So yeah, in grammar, so as I told, English grammar is quite wide, but for these questions, the most important thing is, I'll say, parts of speech. Parts of speech, okay? Parts of speech and their position in a sentence. That's important. So what's part of speech, first of all? So we know what are parts, but parts of speech. What does it mean by the word speech? Speech means, you can say, language. Written or spoken. For example, it's in broad sense, you can say speech, you can say spoken or written language. So this language is divided into different parts. Okay, these are different elements. So these, we divide them, some grammarian divide them into 8, some into 9 different parts. So the language which we use for spoken or written purposes is divided into different parts. Some assume them to be 8, some other grammarian takes them at 9. But what's important for us in PTE are only 4 parts of speech. 4, maximum 5. Okay, we'll talk about. So which are these parts and their position? The most important thing is, where do they sit in a sentence? Their position in a sentence. Because if we talk about English syntax, sentence structure, it has got usually a subject, a verb. It may have an object. It can be object, it can be a complement, but both of these are nouns. This is usually a noun. When I say noun, it can be a pronoun as well. We'll talk about them later on. So an object or complement, they can be both. They can be sometimes 2 objects and a complement. So there are differences. It depends on what verb is there. So you don't need to go into that details. So whether a verb takes 2 objects and a complement, whether the verb doesn't take any object or what it takes, let's don't go into that detail. But you know that subject, verb, and something noun or adjective is usually after it. A noun or an adjective, usually after it. Okay. So, and now at every part, we'll talk about different groups can come. So if we divide it into 3 groups, in each group, there can be many parts of speech. So we'll talk about what comes. Okay. So we'll move to them later on. We'll come to them later on. Let's first move to this one. So parts of speech and their position. So position is important. Where can we use a noun in a sentence? In the position of subject, the position of object, or complement. And then there are different positions as well. We'll talk about as in a positive to a noun. So first thing is the part of speech. What are parts of speech? Most important to you are that you identify a word that it's a noun or not. Noun. A verb is also important, but I'll say adjective. Nouns, adjectives, adverbs, and then you can say verbs. Number 4, if you just know what are prepositions, that's enough. You don't need to do. But first 3 are more important. Verb will also help, but first 3, that you know adjectives, adverbs, and verbs. Sorry, nouns, adjectives, and adverbs. They will help us a lot. And if you know their position in a sentence. And then, so one part is this of grammar. It's not the whole, but it will help you a lot. Another part of grammar that can help you is subject-verb agreement. Subject-verb agreement. Well, subject-verb agreement. In some tenses, the form of verb depends on the subject. When the verb form, so whether we use it verb with s or es, something, okay, or whether it's has or it's have, these kinds of things, or do, does, what do we use? So when the verb form depends upon the subject, it means there is some sort of agreement with verb and subject. So that's called subject-verb agreement. It's mostly used in simple present tense, okay? Simple present tense, not other places. Simple present tense, mostly used in simple present tense. We'll talk about it a bit in detail later on. So simple present tense, sometimes we use verb with s or es at its end. Okay, sometimes we use do or does. Yeah, present perfect is also, whether we use has or we use have. So these are the things. So that's when we use has or have, when we use verb with s or es, or be infinitive, or just a verb alone. There are some choices we need to make. That's subject-verb agreement. So it can help you. Grammar section. There are a few other parts of grammar I'll be talking about, which are important. Well, the third thing important is if you have an idea of tense, which tense, not all. If you have some idea, I don't say you need to know all conscious grammar, but something, we can go through some basic rules and that can help you. So first one is most important. Second, subject-verb agreement. Third one is tense. So not all tense, present tense, especially simple present tense. Present tense, especially simple present tense, and present perfect. Has, have, and third form. Present perfect, that's has, have, plus V3. This is more widely used. Simple present is used a lot in English. Other thing which is commonly used is past tense, more frequent, which is when we use, second form of verb, did, you say. Do, did, done. Is verb third form, I means done. Okay. Simple present, present perfect, past tense. Which past tense? Simple past. The verb form I already told you. This is the verb form, simple present. When we use negative or interrogative questions, we use did plus first form of verb, or we say present tense of verb. Other is past perfect can help you. Some complex sentences. We also call it double past. We'll talk about it. In complicated sentences, complex sentences, past perfect can also help you. And some future forms. So these are present continuous is okay, but yeah, that's simple, mostly you know. But these verb forms can help you a bit more. Simple present can help you, but these, and maybe simple future or future forms, but they are shall will. Use of future tense, I'd say some even grammarian take them as an extension of auxiliary verb shall or will. So don't worry about that. So tense can be, and when we talk about tense, we also talk about the verb forms, whether the verb is in active form or passive. So we'll talk about these active and passive verb form. So you can say it's a part of tense. I don't take them as separate thing. So whether the verb is active or passive verb forms, it can also help you. So these things, maybe a little bit more, but these things, active or passive verb form. For example, you say do is active verb form, its passive verb form is done, was done, is done, am done, is done, are done, something, you know, something is done, I do something, something is done. So it's a passive verb form. We'll talk about it, don't worry, right now. So for example, is doing is present. You can, if you simple, is being done, it's a passive verb form. Has or have plus done, its passive verb form is has or have plus been plus past participle o. Oh, so sorry, it's has or have plus done. Okay, what is past verb, passive verb form? Has or have plus been. Oh. Has or have been plus done. That's the passive verb form, another passive verb form. So they will talk about, I'll give you a list of active and passive verb forms. So don't worry about it. So maybe I'll take a full session, maybe 1 or 2 grammar session, couple of grammar session, and it will be all right. Okay, and we'll use them with plenty of example. So you remember the example. Through example, you remember the rule. Not through rule, you remember the example. So we'll just get some example. So, okay. Yeah, so part of speech. So how can we identify a noun? So there are different categories of nouns. We talk about nouns, whether it's a noun is a countable noun, abstract noun, or something. So there are some, especially its suffix that comes at the end of a word, not prefix that comes before. For example, we said do, redo. So re is a prefix. So suffix is that comes at the end of a word, part. So for example, in fulfillment, if we take the word ment, it's suffix. So ment always makes a noun. If you see a word ending with ment, that's always a noun. If you look at the word shun, at the end of a word, or Asian or shan, that's always a noun. That's always a noun verb form. So I'll give you some sort of these suffixes. So this is a noun verb form. This is a noun form. Constant, A-N-T. Yes, it's an adjective, constant. But A-N-T can be other form as well. So, but mostly it's also an adjective, but it can be sometime other verb form, other word form, not verb form. So before we move forward, can I clear this one? So these things are really important. Okay, so these things, if if I give you this one, oh, yeah. So these parts of thing, I'll say grammar, when we talk about grammar that can help you in blanks, is mostly this part of grammar. Okay, you don't need to know more than that. And we'll talk about it later. I told you grammar means subject-verb agreement, parts of speech, that's most important. And other one is collocation. What's collocation? Collocation means, because there is a word, the word environment, what words are before it, what words are after it, the words around a word, that's collocation. Whether a word fits with other words or not. Especially preposition is very important. When we talk about collocation, preposition has a big role. Preposition has a big role. What are preposition? In, on, off, at, these kinds of prepositions. So collocation can help you. Collocation means some words come in specific environment. For example, we say refer to, always refer to. So that's a kind of collocation. So grammar, collocation, whether a word fits with other words or not. Vocabulary. Sometimes grammar, collocation won't help you, because you have such options which are grammatically all right, collocation-wise all right. If you know the meaning of a word, it will help you a lot. If you know the meaning of the word. And sometimes is the context. Context means which words fits well in what environment. Okay? Right. So this part, if you go to a main page, you will see parts of speech and their position. So you will get the idea what different parts of speech are, what's their position. We'll talk about them. You can, then there are 2-3 pages about nouns, and then a couple of pages on adjectives, how we can identify and use adjectives. And then maybe a couple of pages about adverbs and how we can use in fill in the blanks. And then some subject-verb agreement. So these 4 things are on our main page in grammar section. When you have, so I say today, when after the class, before tomorrow's sessions, do go through these pages, or even over this weekend, couple of days, just spend time on here and we'll talk. I'll take one complete grammar session next week. So we'll cover them, and it will hopefully it will help us find some questions correct. Okay, I don't say all the questions will get correct, but yes, more questions correct. And when we have some options right, others, the chances of others getting correct always, increase. So we'll talk about this. So you can go to this page on our main page, parts of speech. And here.